If you've been subbed to us for a while, or at least did a quick once over the videos we've made, you'll know that I like to read manga a lot. More specifically, I like to lean towards the delinquent and sports genres, like a little too much honestly. But that's not all I read, and in fact, one of those other genres is what I'm focusing on today. See, I really got back into reading manga recently, and instead of tackling my ever-growing backlog, I decided to just pick up some new things to read. This usually comes from whatever shows up on the front page of r/manga or whatever manga reader I use. This is how I stumbled upon a certain translator, a great translator who seems to only work with one specific genre, and that genre is edgy. You see, everyone likes something edgy once in a while. I still read Tales Got Trolled to this day and occasionally listen to the only Evanescence song that matters. So I thought it would be fun to try and find some of the silliest, edgiest manga I could find, within reason. I also thought it would be fun to see if I could skirt the boundary enough to the point where I don't get demonetized outright, which, I mean, might happen one way or another. But you might be wondering what I mean by within reason. Well, it's really easy to just pick something that turned the edginess up to 11, but at that point you're on some unsavory sites and that's just a rabbit hole I know you don't want to go down. Plus, talking about those mangas where the edge is the only thing going for it would be too boring. It would just be me repeating, oh man, that guy got wrecked, forever. So I thought I would instead talk about manga that takes the edge and combines it with some truly ridiculous and silly stories. And what better way to start things off than with the Chicken Manga? I think it's time to search for the edgiest manga. Title pending. So first things first, I should probably try to explain the concept of edgy, which is actually harder than it might seem. The way I see it, it's when someone or some things try to be provocative or dark, but overly so, like to the point where you can't help but cringe or laugh at it. The best way to understand this is to look at 90% of all Sonic OCs, Code still being the one that immediately comes to mind. But if you want to have some fun, Google your name plus the hedgehog and see what comes up. Nothing good, I'll tell you right now. Now, how does all that translate to manga? Well, usually the mangakas like to be graphic, and honestly, it's for the sake of being graphic. You know how there's fan service? Well, the edgy mangas have that too. Except instead of scantily clad women, it's violence and gore. So of course it becomes a mess when it gets too out of hand. And while that can be funny to look at, the best part about these types of mangas are when they put in a story to try and justify all the excessive violence. Because honestly, most of the time it seems like the mangaka has no idea what to do, so they just throw whatever they can at the wall as long as it means they could draw whatever crazy things their crazy minds could think of. And that's why I want to talk about Bougyaku no Kokekko, or as I call it, the Chicken Manga. Bougyaku no Kokekko is about an orphan boy who lives in an orphan home and struggles to live in the world because all adults are bad because he had a couple of bad experiences, which is a recurring theme in this manga, I might add. Right before the orphan boy graduates from high school into a life of freedom, all the adults turn into chickens, but like super chickens, and start culling the masses, which at this point is just anyone under 20. Because being an adult is being above the age of 20, and that's a hard limit, by the way. That is not up for debate. As soon as you hit 20, boom, you immediately turn, and from the looks of it, it seems really painful, though less painful than being found by a chicken. Throughout the chicken apocalypse, the orphan boy does his best to save all the orphan kids, and he does this by being the most annoying character. You know how a common criticism of horror movies is that the main characters lack any sort of logic? Well, the MC in Bougyaku takes that and turns it up to 11 and then breaks the dial. There are even times where I'm not sure if the MC knows the situation he's in. The optimism is fine and all, but there's a point where you gotta be realistic. The perfect example to illustrate this is the Knife Sama saga. So pretty early into the apocalypse, the characters are holed up in the orphan home because it's been relatively safe from chicken attacks. Well, MC gives an MC lecture, a knife-wielding weirdo who looks like an alien breaks in and threatens to use the littlest orphan kids as bait for the chicken. The MC, instead of just overpowering him and throwing him out, submits to his demands and loses some of his fingers, which he proceeds to eat because I truly believe his mind is broken. He doesn't really do anything until it's too late and one of the kids gets chucked to the chickens, which of course the MC saves. They only get rid of the knife alien when the glasses orphan teen, or should I say the true hero, pushes him off the balcony into a bunch of chickens, And while that should be the end of that, our lovely MC decides to risk his life to save the guy, which just ends up backfiring near the end of the manga. That's also a thing that happens a lot. MC will throw himself into the midst of chaos to save someone, and if plot armor wasn't a thing, he would have been gone a long time ago. But don't get me wrong, a lot of people do get murked by the chickens, and the mangaka really knows how to draw it. Just imagine a lot of pecking and pulling. And honestly, a lot of the chapters tend to focus on the amount of damage that a lot of really big chickens can cause. It kind of lows in the middle due to this. I mean, I almost dropped this manga because nothing was really happening other than seeing the different ways a chicken can peck a human. I'm glad I didn't though, because the story kicks it into overdrive when they reach a dome that they think is safe. But that might be because the mangaka knew he had to end it at some point. I should warn you now, I'm going to talk about the biggest spoilers in the manga, but I mean, even with spoilers, it's so silly and ridiculous that I really recommend reading it just to understand why it's so funny. So they end up meeting the creator of this whole thing, the person who turned the adults into chickens, and it turns out he is making human chicken hybrids because for some ungodly reason, he thinks that this is the hybrid that results in the perfect human. And you shouldn't think too hard about how he made it happen, it's as gross as you think. They also come right out of the egg as a 20-year-old, so that's kind of something. And the reason he's doing this is because he's mad that the best surgeon didn't operate on his daughter after he promised, and concludes that all adults ever are trash and deserve to be removed from the world instead of beating the brakes off the surgeon like any sensible person would. And then this manga uses a measly 2 panels to say that he figured out how to make a drug that turns people into chickens because it can make his daughter a chicken to birth a new daughter, and that just opens the door to wonder who fertilized the egg, but I don't think the manga could thought too hard about that. Or he did, and then this manga really deserves the title of the edgiest manga. But what I wanted to point out was how they just hand-waved any explanations they would have to give. He opened so many questions and answered none of them. Like, I would have accepted some made-up science-y crap, but they took the biggest plot element and poorly explained it off in 2 panels. But the best part is he just has it in a syringe called Chicken Transformation Advancement Drug Experimental, which might have been the hardest I laughed reading this. He just has it sitting around in his back pocket for the perfect opportunity to use it on someone. But it's all cool because after MC gives an MC speech to the villain gives him the cure, aptly labeled Chicken Transformation Prevention, the second hardest I laughed, by the way. Then it just basically ends with the MC not learning a single lesson about self-preservation. So how edgy was it? Well, it's very grotesque and a lot of the implications are messed up if you spend any time thinking about it. The chicken attacks were super versatile for how visceral they were, but like I said, it was just there to be there. And then you add the story into the equation and no matter how hard they try, I can't see anyone taking it seriously. The biggest theme seemed to be don't trust adults because they're all cruel and evil. And if that isn't edgy, I don't know what is. As for my actual enjoyment, ironically enough, the parts where they really focused on the story were my favorite by far because of the sheer absurdity of it. The gory scenes were good enough, the mangaka is really good at drawing that stuff. I mean, I had to do a double take a couple times because it's so detailed. It's like a C-movie where it's so bad it's good, and it really shines when you read the comments as you go through the chapters. It's like watching a bad movie with your buds. So I thought I'd take the time to read some of those comments, censored of course. So this is close to an end. What's next? People turning into cows? It's like Bad Decisions the manga. The characters did a lot of questionable that might have been avoided if they at least think a bit. This is like a train wreck you can't look away from. It's fascinating, but at the same time completely infuriating. They just brushed over so much important in the bottom panels of page 15. What the dumb out of 10.
This is kinda cool.
And my favorite, garbage ass manga, please give me back the time I wasted reading this. And that's about it. Once again, if you got a couple hours to kill, you should definitely read it. It really is just out of control because that's just how chickens roll. Or if you don't want to read all that, you can kind of skip to like chapter 36 and just go from there. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I want to do more of these types of videos, so if this one does reasonably well, like in the 100 view range, I'll definitely do some more of these. And if there's a manga you feel is really edgy, let me know in the comments below. But before you have that extra serving of chicken, have a good day.